Hey kids, Evil-Linn here. And, by the power of Grayskull, let's talk Ironheart. Remember when Marvel productions were must-see events? Lately, it feels like the magic is wearing off. Ironheart, the new Disney Plus series, is a prime example of how far Marvel has fallen. The show was quietly dumped onto the platform in a bizarre release pattern, 6 episodes split across just 2 weeks, 3 episodes at a time. It's almost as if even Disney had little faith and wanted to get it over with quickly. And for good reason. Ironheart is a bad show. Not fun bad, just bad on every level. The embodiment of everything wrong with Marvel in recent years. Under former Disney CEO Bob Chapek, Marvel chased quantity over quality. And this series was a product of that era. A misfire that might be the final nail in the MCU's once impenetrable armor. Marvel's Phase 4 and 5 have been shaky, and Ironheart continues the trend. If Echo was lifeless and Secret Invasion was dull, Ironheart is downright insufferable. It delivers a forgettable, flimsy story that even a talented cast can't save. At times, the dialogue and tone are so awkwardly preachy that it sounds like it was written by a corporate diversity consultant instead of a creative writer. In short, the series is a mess. And sadly, it's exactly the kind of mess Marvel has been churning out lately. Ironheart centers on Riri Williams, Dominique Thorne, a teen genius positioned as the next Tony Stark. The problem is, the show doesn't earn that legacy. It just tells us she's a genius without making it believable or compelling. In fact, within the first 10 minutes, the script actually dismisses Tony Stark himself. Riri and others suggest Tony's only real asset was his money, downplaying his brains and sacrifices. Bold move, Ironheart, considering Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a bunch of scraps, a feat the show conveniently forgets. Riri has the benefits of MIT's labs, Wakandian tech, and a multi-million-dollar grant, yet she's nowhere near matching Tony's accomplishments. The writers constantly imply Riri is superior to Stark in every way except his bank account. But after 4 years of tinkering at MIT, she still hasn't even finished her own suit. Tony built his first Iron Man armor under terrorist captivity in a week. Riri can't get hers working after years of top-notch education and resources. How exactly is she better than Tony again? The show wants to pay homage to Iron Man's legacy while simultaneously tearing it down. It's an odd mix of reverence and revisionism. Riri says at one point she wants to create armor suits to help first responders, a noble goal, but moments later her true motivation shines through. She really just wants to prove she's the new genius on the block, better than Stark ever was. By sidelining and disparaging Tony's legacy, Ironheart thought it could elevate Riri, but it only succeeds in annoying longtime MCU fans. It's hard not to roll your eyes when a founding Avenger is shrugged off as irrelevant, especially by a kid who hasn't earned that confidence. One of Ironheart's biggest failures is its protagonist. Riri Williams might be a tech prodigy, but she's incredibly hard to root for. Unlike Tony Stark, who, despite his flaws, oozed charisma and ultimately found a moral compass, Riri comes off as arrogant, cold, and completely lacking in empathy. She outright states that she doesn't even want to be a hero, feels no obligation to help anyone, and is building her suits and AI just because she can. That's not heroism or ambition, that's plain narcissism. Her every action is self-serving, yet the show still expects us to cheer for her simply because she's the lead. As one critic aptly put it, it's difficult to support a character who shows no remorse for abusing her skills to lie, cheat, and manipulate people for her own personal gain. Riri's decisions are often shockingly selfish. At one point, she has the power to save someone's life and chooses not to, letting them die because it's inconvenient for her agenda. Yes, you heard me right. Our hero basically commits a cold-blooded act of omission. Tony Stark had his ego issues too, but by the end of his first film, he literally risked his life and gave up his weapons business to do the right thing. Riri, on the other hand, finishes the season still acting largely in her own self-interest, with barely a hint of genuine heroism or growth. It's a terrible message to send and makes for an utterly unlikable lead. Even the show itself seems to acknowledge Riri's moral bankruptcy at times. A rival character, Zeke Stane, son of Iron Man's old foe Obadiah Stane, directly calls her out for how she's willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate everyone around her for personal gain. He hits the nail on the head. But Ironheart never successfully redeems or grapples with Riri's flaws. She faces minimal consequences for her cutthroat behavior. The series tries to explain her attitude with backstory trauma, a dead father and best friend, but it doesn't land. Without the wit, charm, or heart to balance her genius, Riri just comes off as unpleasant and self-centered. It's a stark contrast, no pun intended, to the MCU heroes we grew up loving. If the characters don't drive you away, the nonsensical plot might. The writing in Ironheart is so sloppy that nothing, and I mean nothing, makes any real sense. The series asks us to suspend our disbelief to the breaking point with its technobabble and convenient plot devices. For instance, Riri's high-tech Ironheart armor is somehow solar and wind-powered, an eco-friendly idea, but utterly ludicrous in execution. According to one tongue-in-cheek calculation, her suit's tiny solar panels would have to be 32,000% efficient to keep her flying at just 120 miles per hour. The show blithely ignores basic physics and engineering, even by comic book standards. It becomes hard to tell if we're watching a Marvel series or a Saturday morning cartoon that never heard of the laws of thermodynamics. And then there's the AI subplot. Perhaps Ironheart's most forehead-slapping absurdity. Riri claims she can't afford to finish developing a complex artificial intelligence, then literally proceeds to do it anyway overnight in her bedroom with just a laptop. In the span of a single episode, she miraculously creates Natalie, a fully functional, sentient AI based on her deceased best friend. And how does she achieve this marvel of computer science, you might ask? Apparently by accident, in her sleep, via a cybernetic glitch. Yes, that's the actual explanation. Next thing we know, Riri's got a digital ghost BFF. The Natalie AI can talk, joke, hack any system, and even project as a lifelike hologram following Riri around like some sci-fi Casper. This isn't treated as a horror or a huge ethical dilemma. No, the show presents it like it's totally normal. Teen genius stuff. Ironheart glosses over the staggering implications of a 15-year-old building a human-level AI on a whim, because the plot needs Natalie to be Riri's quippy sidekick. The whole thing crosses from suspension of disbelief into pure farce. No wonder one reviewer quipped that Ironheart's science makes Star Trek look like a documentary. When a Starfleet warp core sounds more realistic than your DIY dorm room supercomputer, you know there's a problem. On top of that, the show constantly bends its own rules to move the story along. Riri's Ironheart suit and gadgets work or fail as the plot demands, not based on any consistent logic. One moment, she can't get the suit to function due to lack of funds, resources. The next, she's pulling advanced tech solutions out of thin air. The internal consistency of the MCU, something even the wildest Avengers movies tried to maintain, is nowhere to be found. It's all MacGuffins and Deus Ex Machinas. By the end, you're left with countless unanswered questions and head-scratching plot holes. Don't even get me started on how the big villain's master plan makes zero sense. We'd be here all day. Every superhero story is only as strong as its villains, and here, Ironheart nosedives further. The series tries to pit Riri's technology against dark magic by introducing Parker Robbins, aka the Hood, played by Anthony Ramos, an intriguing concept on paper. The Hood wields a demonic cloak and powers sourced from a deal with a devilish entity, bringing a supernatural twist to the otherwise tech-focused show. This could have been a cool tech versus magic dynamic, with shades of Doctor Strange meets Iron Man. Unfortunately, the execution is, once again, lackluster. The Hood's personal story is thin, and his motivations boil down to generic vengeance. Ramos does his best to give the character some menace and complexity, but the script gives him little to work with. By the finale, he's just another forgettable MCU baddie who gets dispatched and leaves no lasting impression. Worse still is the Hood's crew, a motley gang of criminals and misfits who are, frankly, painful to watch. The show bizarrely wants us to find this ragtag bunch of thieves endearing, or at least entertaining, but they're neither. In fact, one critic noted, there may have never been a more generic, irritating band of baddies than the crew that follows Parker Robbins on his heists. They have almost no characterization beyond silly nicknames and surface-level diversity. There's the token hacker, the muscle, etc., but none of them have any depth or likability. They sort of remind me of the crew from the last Saints Row video game, and yet Ironheart keeps pushing them into scenes as if we're supposed to care. The result is cringeworthy. At times, it even seems the show is asking us to root for these criminals because they're aligned with Riri for part of the story. A big ask when these folks go around murdering and stealing with glee. Speaking of stealing, Ironheart delivers some truly warped morals via its villains. The Hood's gang is portrayed as a diverse group of thieves and liars who justify their crimes under a warped Robin Hood rationale. Robbing rich people is righteous, and the wealthy deserve whatever they get. The show literally reinforces the idea that extorting and harming rich white tech bros is fine because, well, they're rich and presumably evil by default. One scene has the villain extort a biotech CEO who's actually trying to solve world hunger. Yet we're meant to nod along because he's a rich guy, so he must deserve it. It's a baffling message even within the story's own logic. By the end, it feels like Ironheart has no true hero. Riri is out for herself, and the antagonists are just as self-serving. There's no clear moral center. The lack of a compelling, well-defined villain, or hero for that matter, leaves the entire conflict feeling hollow. When you're longing for the nuanced antagonists of earlier Marvel days, Killmonger, Loki, heck, even Thanos had a coherent motive, you know something went wrong. The show also throws in another antagonist, Zeke Stane, played by Alden Ehrenreich, who is the son of the first Iron Man movie's villain, Obadiah Stane. You'd think that connection would matter, but Zeke is given scant development. He mostly sulks about living in his father's shadow, daddy issues galore, and crosses paths with Riri in uninspired ways. It's a waste of a good actor and a potentially interesting character. By the finale, Zeke is just another loose end, the Hood is a footnote, and their evil scheme involving demon deals and tech theft leaves more questions than answers. In short, Ironheart's villains are dull as dirt, a far cry from the compelling foes Marvel used to deliver. The only remotely exciting antagonist doesn't show up until the very end. Okay, quick spoiler alert, in case you haven't yet watched the show and don't want the ending spoiled, you've been warned. In the final episode, we do get one genuinely exciting surprise villain cameo. The demon Mephisto finally makes his MCU debut after years of fan speculation. In the closing chapters, Sacha Baron Cohen appears as Mephisto, chewing the scenery in a delightfully wicked performance. It's brief, but undeniably the most interesting thing that happens in the whole series. Mephisto's scenes crackle with an energy and menace that the rest of Ironheart sorely lacks. Unfortunately, this highlight arrives far too late, essentially in the epilogue. And while it teases big implications for the wider MCU, it does nothing to redeem the 5.5 episodes of tedium we endured prior. Still, credit where it's due. Cohen's casting as the devilish Mephisto is spot on and might give Marvel something fun to play with in future projects. It's just a shame his debut had to be buried in this dud of a series. The failure of Ironheart isn't just about one show. It reflects a larger misstep in Marvel's post-Endgame strategy. In the past few years, Marvel has been obsessed with legacy characters and passing the torch. Ever since the original Avengers bowed out, new heroes have been suiting up to replace their predecessors. The idea is fine in theory. Characters aging or retiring and new ones stepping up is a natural progression. But Marvel's execution of this has been clumsy at best. Rather than letting new heroes shine on their own terms, Marvel often tries to shove them into the exact molds of beloved characters, and fans can tell when it doesn't fit. Riri Williams is the textbook example. She's explicitly positioned as the next Tony Stark, yet the show doesn't give her the depth or likability to carry that mantle. The constant comparisons to Iron Man only highlight how short Riri falls of the mark. As one reviewer noted, Riri deserved better than being positioned as Stark's successor and being weighed down with the responsibilities and expectations of filling a billionaire philanthropist's shoes at barely 20 years old. In trying so hard to make her Iron Man 2.0, Marvel forgot to make her a compelling Ironheart 1.0. The same pattern has played out elsewhere in the MCU. For instance, after Chadwick Boseman's tragic passing, Marvel chose to have Shuri, T'Challa's younger sister, take up the mantle of Black Panther. Now, Shuri was a fantastic character as the witty, tech-savvy princess in Black Panther, but was she believable as the next great protector of Wakanda? Many fans had mixed feelings. It didn't help that Black Panther Wakanda Forever had to both honor Boseman and rush Shuri into the hero role. The result was divisive. Shuri's a skinny science nerd suddenly beating up warriors twice her size. A tough sell, even with heart-shaped herb magic. She was already lovable as herself, and arguably didn't need to be a carbon copy of her brother. Then there's the case of Captain America. When Steve Rogers retired at the end of Endgame, he passed the shield to Falcon, Sam Wilson. Sam is a great character, loyal, principled, and cool in his own right, but making him Captain America by decree felt forced to a lot of viewers. In the comics, Sam did become Cap, yes, but in the MCU, there was a strong argument that Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, could have been an equally, if not more, logical choice given his long history with Steve. Instead, Marvel went with Sam, and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier series tried to justify it. The show was okay, but many fans would have been happier to see Sam continue as Falcon headlining his own movie rather than squeezing him into Cap's old costume. It's as if Marvel doesn't trust us to care about a hero unless they're wearing someone else's brand. Sam Wilson was awesome as Falcon. Putting the Cap shield on him didn't automatically make him more awesome. It just invited unfair comparisons to Steve Rogers. This trend of swapping out beloved legacy characters for newer, replacement heroes has not been the smooth baton pass Marvel hoped for. In some cases, it's met with outright backlash. The internet has dubbed this the era of the MCU in some circles, as Marvel introduces more female or diverse stand-ins for original heroes. But even setting aside any toxic fanboy whining, there's a valid creative criticism. The new characters aren't being given the solid foundation they need. Instead of organically earning their status, they're propped up by the legacy of others. Ironheart exemplifies this flaw. Riri never truly steps out of Tony Stark's shadow because the show keeps her in that shadow, inviting constant comparisons and then failing to live up to them. Marvel needs to remember that audiences will embrace new heroes if they're well written and stand on their own merits. Simply slapping a famous name or suit on someone and denigrating the original in the process isn't the way to win hearts. In the end, Ironheart is a discouraging sign for the MCU. What was meant to be a bright new chapter for Marvel's next generation turned into a showcase of everything not to do in a superhero series. The plot is riddled with holes and contrivances, the protagonist is shockingly unsympathetic, and the whole thing feels like it's checking boxes like, make sure to reference Tony Stark, but also tear him down and introduce a diverse crew of side characters, but give them no depth. And hey, let's throw in some magical mumbo-jumbo, why not, rather than telling a coherent story. It's disappointing because the concept of Riri Williams, a young black girl genius continuing Iron Man's legacy, could have been awesome if handled with care and creativity. Instead, Ironheart gives us a joyless lead with self-serving motivations, wrapped in a sloppy narrative, and expects us to applaud. To be fair, I'll toss in the few positives I can find. The visual effects are actually pretty solid. Riri's final Ironheart armor and the magic visuals are movie quality and look cool on screen. The idea of mixing magic and technology has moments where you glimpse a better show. One scene of Riri's tech confronting a demonic entity had me thinking, okay, that's neat. The cast is also far better than the material. Dominique Thorne, Anthony Ramos, Lyric Ross, and Alden Ehrenreich all deliver committed performances, occasionally elevating the dull script. And of course, that late-game Mephisto cameo was a fun surprise that reminded me of the old MCU excitement, if only for a minute. But these are crumbs of goodness in an otherwise stale loaf. Marvel Studios once stood for consistent quality, a mix of humor, heart, and heroics that thrilled audiences worldwide. Now, with projects like Ironheart, it feels like the brand is on shaky ground. The show's abbreviated run and rushed release suggest even Marvel wanted to sweep it under the rug and move on. As a fan, that makes me sad. If Marvel wants to win back viewers, it needs to seriously rethink its approach, put story and character first, not agenda or assembly line content output. Give us new heroes we can love for who they are, not just because they're wearing someone else's mantle. And please, for the love of Stan Lee, patch up those potholes and bring back some of the old MCU wit and charm. In its current state, Ironheart is a forgettable, frustrating detour in the Marvel saga. One that ironically lacks the very thing its title promises. It has no heart. Marvel, do better. Your fans still want to believe in heroes, but shows like this make it really hard. And there we go, my first negative video. I really hope I can keep negative videos like this to a minimum going forward, but I guess that's up to Hollywood. Anyway, thank you for taking the time to listen to me rant, and now that you've heard my opinions on Ironheart and the state of the MCU, I want to hear yours. Head to the comments and let me know what you think. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe while you're at it. Now be gone, puny human, for there is evil to be done.